Hi, I'm Susan McDougal with Chaplaincy Alive. It was just 11 days ago that America suffered its worst mass shooting in modern history. 49 people killed and 53 others grievously wounded that early morning. We have with us today chaplains who are on the ground providing care and support for families, victims, loved ones, police, and rescue personnel. We thank them for joining us today. We have with us Missouri McPhee, who was there that day. Missouri, can you take us through the beginning of that day for you, what you saw, what you heard, how you felt as you came into this situation?
Woke up that morning, Sunday morning, it's a church day in my household, and getting ready for church, heard on the news that 20 people had been shot at a nightclub. And my son and I typically go to early morning service. So at 7:30 is sitting in church. And by the time we were halfway through the 9:30 service, there was an update that the count was then 50. And that's when it really became real. I mean, we live in a city, in a metropolitan city, where we are no strangers to crime and shooting. That happens on a regular basis. And being a trauma chaplain, we see quite a bit of it. So you kind of get used to it. And I got a call about halfway through my service, my mid-morning service, indicating that they needed chaplains and that there was a need for our presence. And I didn't know if it was at the hospital or where else. And then I got some subsequent follow-up calls that chaplains needed to be at the staging area. And getting there that morning, it was chaotic.
Oh, yeah.
There were families everywhere, and the magnitude of the whole situation was quite overwhelming. I did not expect almost 300 people, and we were situated in a very small hotel that was adjacent to our trauma center, Orlando Regional Medical Center, which is the downtown Orlando. And families everywhere, people crying, people hopeful, people anxious, people really frustrated because they've not heard word from their loved ones, and people still trying to contact their loved ones. And then people kept coming, bringing donations. So in addition to people, we had like mountains of food everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And then they started staging and, waiting for word from the medical examiner's office. And we had the paramedics on standby because we knew what the task at hand was going to be. Yeah. And while we remained hopeful that some of these patrons made it out alive, we clearly understood what we were looking at from news reports. And our only prayer was that we were able to advise the families that their loved ones were no longer with us before the news media outlets did. Yeah. Because they were everywhere. I mean, there was and I think at such a time as this, I know this is news, but it's also people's lives. And the privacy not, being respected, but I will say that the hotel staff kept them off property. And so that was the good thing. They could only, videotape from the street and across so they were not allowed to be anywhere on the Hampton Inn's property. So which gave the families some relative peace, and also the first responders out there a little bit of room in order to work.
So the press felt really invasive to you. It felt
extremely. Mm-hmm. Extremely invasive. It's almost like I felt like vultures had descended on what was absolutely, for our city, and for the families there, one of the worst moments possible. And everything is, and all they wanted to do was the storyline.
Yes. Can you talk about maybe as you get there, what is the first conversation you had that really sticks with you? As you walk into this scene, who walks up to you? Who starts talking with you?
Well, I had a young lady to walk up to me. She was looking for her son. And she was, said she had been up all night since she had heard, and there was no word. She had contacted all of his friends. And she indicated to me that, you know, the last words that they had exchanged were unpleasant, and how she wished she could take that back. And just having this person who I didn't know and who didn't know me because I had just arrived, literally collapsed into my arms and started sobbing. Then I really realized this was going to be an extremely emotionally taxing day. And, you know, many of my colleagues have stories of some of the same encounters. And then I encountered a member of my own church who was there, and I did, because I belong to a 4,000 member church, so I don't know everyone who was there, but she knew me. And she said, Dr. McPhee, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm a chaplain. What are you doing here? And she said, my nephew. We can't find my nephew. And this is the mother. Her sister was the mother of the young man that the news had reported, had texted his mom saying, I'm hiding in the bathroom. He's coming in here. I'm going to die. Yes. And I had no idea it would have been so close to home. So emotions were already raw, and my day there had just begun.
You must have really felt that it was going to be just overwhelming at that point. People in front of you. Did you talk to rescue?
And I had an opportunity. He receives an OPD volunteer chaplain, Orlando Police Department. Yes. And he received a phone call that the law enforcement at the scene needed to be checked on. And so, yes, and so he grabbed me, and he and I and another chaplain journeyed down to the scene. And much to our surprise, they actually let us in. And which was, but they knew what we were there to do. Yes. And you know, everything was blocked off, and we had an opportunity to go down there and just to actually be with those, because at the time we arrived on the scene, you know, we were informed that they had not even begun the gruesome task of removing the bodies from the scene. And so, you know, our job was to go there and to minister to these extremely brave men and women whom, you know, we take for granted, especially in in the media recently, that the police, law enforcement are bad people. Yes. And that's, you know, that's a tiny, minute percentage of them. But every day these men and women put their lives on the line, and they expose themselves to all kinds of emotional and vicarious traumas. And just to be of service to them, as much as they serve our community, I think for us, we did a good thing there. Oh, Chaplain Torres can jump in at any time.
Good morning, Angel. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
If you could kind of give us an idea of what those officers that you were meeting with, what those rescue personnel were kind of saying. What were the things that were on their heart as you walked in there? What did they need to talk to the chaplain about?
Well, the incident was very recently, so I think that most of them, they were still working in everything that they needed to do. So really what they were been through didn't have shocked them yet. So most of them, we approached them and they said, oh, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Yeah. But after the days passed, we had the chief had a mandatory debriefing for law enforcement, and we had over 250 law enforcement for that debriefing from all the agencies, from Orlando Police, the Sheriff Department, There were some people there from the FBI, Homeland Security, and it's been about 2 or 3 days past already from the incident, and there was when they started to open up and sharing what all the horrible and horrific things that they had that they saw and had to do.
A little bit about, would you talk with us a minute about how your day sort of began and what you saw when you got there and how it unfolded for you? Just take us through your thoughts on that.
Time. And so after multiple phone calls and coordinations, we finally got the word that we were to be placed on call, or on standby rather, for the situation in case something were to occur. And that somewhat disappointed me, while at the same time too, it relieved me. Because I, in that moment, had a sense of reality that even though I'd been doing chaplain ministry for 10 years in an acute care facility and stood by the bedside of people experiencing grief and loss for so long, and working in a trauma center, that nothing of that nature could have ever prepared me for what I would experience there at the staging area and the scene. And so I was in a sense of preparation, but at the same time too, a time where I just didn't know quite how it would happen, what things would be set up. You know, the sense of, can chaos ever be in any way organized? And so trying to come to that reality and determine how best we as chaplains could minister to the families and first responders there in the midst of everything. And as soon as I arrived, we quickly learned that my fears were correct. But we as chaplains for Orlando Health were able to come together with chaplains from Florida Hospital and other agencies as well. In assessing each of our skills and our abilities, we were able to put together the best plan of care that we could for that time and that moment. And that in itself was a rewarding moment, to truly feel the spirit of collegiality, even though it be in a desperate time as that. And so that's one of the many memories that I'll have from that experience, is beyond speaking to those that have experienced the fear and the loss that so many have.
Excuse me, without telling any names or breaching any confidentiality, could you talk about a little bit someone you spoke with, or some incident there that really has stayed on your heart, really has been on your mind these last few days?
There was an elderly woman whose son had not been heard from for some time. And when she had heard of the news, she came to look for her son there at the staging area, with no luck to find him. And she was an emotional wreck and began just to be there present with her. And eventually she turned to me and she said, "Chaplain, I have to confess something to you." And we began to dialogue, and she relieved to me that she didn't approve of her son's lifestyle, that she had feared that she had lost her love for her son. And that was a guilt for her in a tremendous way. But when the news broke and she came, she began to realize that the love for her son had never really lost. That she needed someone to talk to process that, the fact that even though she may disagree, that she still needed to love her son because her son loved her. And we talked for some time, and eventually we were able to get her settled and calm down, and more family arrived. And then at the end of the day, near the end of the day, as we were preparing to leave, she pulled me aside and said, "I found my son." And so that was one of those rewarding moments of relief for her and for me. But
it seems like all those conflicts that we have in a time like this where we might have or something terrible happen, those things seem pretty paltry, don't they? Those differences that are between people. It was wonderful that you were there to hear her story, and that's a great story, especially of that place and that time. These people were targeted. These families are coming together. Arnold, welcome.
Well, thank you. Once I arrived down to the staging area, I never imagined what I would see. A news-hungry media on one side, and I see grief on the other side. As I walked into the parking lot, and I will never forget this, there was a couple standing and hugging each other, a man and woman. It was as though they were in their own island and own space, and no one was coming within their sacred space. And when I went in, I found Missouri, Angel, and Scott. They explained to me what had happened. And Missouri said, but just do what you do. Do your job, what you've been trained to do. And I remember a group crying. And Missouri said, go and do what you do. To me, I didn't expect to experience what I experienced, because I thought all the damage was down at Pulse, but there was damage at the Hampton Inn.
Yeah.
Families were hurting, families were grieving, and I didn't process it for myself until I went home. As I drove home, I thought about it, could have been my child or my family member. But I knew I had to be there for the people that were there.
Thank you so much for telling us that. It's overwhelming to hear it. I can't even imagine how overwhelming it must have been. In the aftermath of all this, what's going on now? What are you coping with now? 11 days after all this, what's going on now for you as a chaplain?
Lack of sleep.
Yeah.
I am haunted by the collective screams of the almost 300 people there. We have quite a few things going on in the community. There are visuals on top of vigils and benefits and the like, humanitarian responses. And our city is grieving because this has touched all of us. And I think the politicians are focusing on the quote unquote terrorist attack and not on the terror and the horror and the grief that we are suffering. And then for me, it has personal significance because it happened so close to the 1-year anniversary of the Emmanuel 9.
Yeah.
Where 9 persons were slaughtered in Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston. And Arnold and I are proud members of the clergy of the AME Church. And so for this to be right on the heels, it just opened up fresh wounds for us that we had just begun to start to heal. And I know you hear us say it went from 20 dead to 50 dead, and everybody is wondering because the news media has since redacted that to 49. And for me, my faith tradition demands that the victim count remain at 50. because the perpetrator was himself a victim of his own madness and his own internal conflict and his own unhappiness. And I think forgiveness, because he has a family too, wife and a child and parents. And I think that gets lost in the horrific act that he's committed. And his child has to grow up with that label that your father did this. And what an awful burden on such young shoulders. And so it is the families of 50 persons that are grieving, because forgiveness is not a natural act. It is a supernatural act. And so when we can position ourselves in a posture of forgiveness, it makes healing so much easier to come by.
What would you all say, the three of you there, what do you think this community is needing to heal? Are there things that can be done to help this community heal in a way that is more healthy? Or is the media helping that? Is it not helping that? Is the city coming together? Are there people arranging things, organizing things for families, and even first responders? And what's going on to help the healing there?
Well, I'll say this. I am immensely proud of the mayor of Orlando, Buddy Dyer, and his team, including Reggie McGill, who have, they have kept city facilities open, had made sure they were staffed with volunteers, licensed mental health counselors, and social workers, and people who would assist the families, because first the immediate need is burial. I mean, that's an immediate thing. What are we going to do? Helping two persons were buried in Puerto Rico on this past week. We've had quite a bit of the funerals already happened here. And so when you see the city come together, there is a GoFundMe page that's raised almost $6 million for the families in 9 days. And, we have the One Orlando Fund as well. And I mean, just to see the outpouring of the humanitarian effort. And no, the media has not done them justice, because they keep trying to make this, it was a gay nightclub. It was, always with the labels. All we know is that people were in there having a good time, which they have a right to do. This is America. And some mad person came in and snuffed them out before their time. Yeah. And now we have 50 families grieving. It doesn't matter if they're gay, straight, or have a different religion. That doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter to the city. And that's what gives us hope. And our hospital has provided licensed mental health counselors for us to see. Some of us may have needed to see some of them before now, but and so that's been quite helpful for those of us in our ongoing process to understand this tragedy, at least to come to terms with it, because I don't think we can truly understand it, no matter what the final analyses may be. And I am also particularly proud of Sheriff Jerry Demings, who is the Orange County Sheriff. He's a member of my church, and as I like to say, has raised me since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And to see him working overtime, providing leadership for the city.
Yeah, he's done a great job. He's really done a great job. And
all the while, other things have happened in the wake of this. We've had the 2-year-old who was snatched by the alligator out at Disney. We've had a couple of other shootings. I mean, and so he has been really on. the whole time. But let me tell you this, he showed up in church on Sunday and stayed for 3 services, as tired as he was, because he was the steward on duty.
Yes.
And so I'm very proud as to how our city is coming together, how we have blocked out whatever media labels are out there and just love people as people and see people's humanity and not the labels that society has placed on them.
I think watching it from afar, from a distance, it makes you proud to see the folks that are in Orlando, how they're coping with this, what they're saying, the words that are coming out of there are very loving, open, kind. It feels good to watch the officials that you're talking about come up. And although the media is talking a lot about the labels, it still, even then, they are being inclusive and loving and kind about who those people are and their families. And I think all of America are with you. Everyone I talk to just is still talking about how you all came together and helped one another in that time. It's really amazing to applaud. Arnold, how are you doing?
Well, at the moment, okay, one of the ways that I'm finding healing or help for myself is helping others at the moment. We're doing a conversation on hope tonight at my church, where we're inviting those from the community to come in with some clinicians, Missouri, and a few other people. And we're going to talk about how do we bring hope to situations like this. And this is going to be good for me. I'm going to sit back and listen and see how I can bring hope to my situation. I have not lost faith in people. I have not lost faith in the process, but I have gained an understanding of how to love people more and how to believe in those and help those who are hurting and bleeding in their hearts when they're going through tragic situations. This right here has really changed my focus and the dynamics of my ministry as a whole. My life would never be the same. That's all I can say. And it's for the better, not for the worse. I see new opportunities to help people, and at the same time, to help myself. I think the only regret that I do have is that there are some people that will not get the help that they need, and some more lives will be lost in all of this, because their voices will go unheard when they begin to cry to their family members, to their religious leaders, that their voices will not be heard, and we'll have another life lost.
In some instances in cities where you have a tragedy like that, it tears the city apart. I mean, we've watched it on national television where cities have just come apart. I think the great thing about Orlando is you guys have held it together. You've worked together, and in most cases, been comforting and caring of one another and laudatory of your public officials. And even then, what I hear you saying is there will be some people who will not be comforted, will not be heard, and you worry about those. You worry about the ones that are outside that circle of care and love. Well, these stories are transforming for you, that they're transforming for all of us. We've watched every day as you all have been on the ground, and it is really something to hear your stories. Thank you so much. Are you where you can talk with us now? Are you?
I think so. As soon as I got there, my senior chaplain instructed me to go to the hotel where they were sending all these families to get information. As soon as I got there, I realized that we were going to need all the help that we could get. So I immediately called Chaplain Fleming, and he graciously started calling other chaplain. And shortly after, I started getting calls from everywhere, all the chaplains from all the healthcare organization here in Central Florida, that how they could help and where they needed to go. So I directed them, and I'm very proud because my colleagues, they were one of the first that responded, and they were there giving spiritual and emotional support.
Yes. If we could talk with you again and see how you're doing, see if you started sleeping, see if you're better. Take care of yourselves.
Well, we all want to give you a hug.
I need a hug. I do. I've watched it just every day, and I've been so proud of you all, knowing that you were there, and to see you all face to face and hear your stories. It's really moving and gratifying to know that this is the business we're in, that we're able to be there in tough times, and that it does affect us. I love you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you all
We'll
for
get
giving
back
us
with
an
you.
opportunity to share our story.
We'll get back with you and hear how you are. I want to follow up with you if that's okay.
That's fine.
Bye.
You're welcome in. Bye-bye.
Hi, Krista.